Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to the Georgia House Democrats Conference on Education. My name is Lisa Campbell and I'm the Georgia House Representative for District 35, the communities of Kennesaw, Ackworth, and Marietta. And I'll be hosting this conference today and introducing many of our guests. Today we have members of the Georgia House Democratic Caucus, educational leaders, parents, teachers, students, and staff, and we are calling for an end to efforts by Georgia's GOP to destabilize Georgia's public schools. As reported by the AP late last year, due to the rules passed by the new agency running Georgia's ESSA voucher program, nearly 30% of all of Georgia's students, hundreds of thousands of families, will be eligible for the vouchers. Vouchers that are going to pay private school tuition under an expansive interpretation of SB 233. This expansion was enabled by the GOP's bill despite overwhelming evidence showing that voucher programs in other states strip funds away from public schools. They lack fiscal and academic accountability. They result in lower academic outcomes, and they do not provide students with the same rights and protections that they would otherwise have in schools, such as IEPs. We believe they violate the fundamental right to religious freedom. They do not adequately serve students with disabilities and are used primarily by families who already send their kids to private schools. This is the latest example of Georgia's GOP's attempts to undermine public education and manipulate public perception about responsible solutions to strengthen educational opportunities for all of Georgia's students. First, I'd like to hand it over to our minority leader, Carolyn Hughley, to share a few words.
Thank you, Representative Campbell. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today. This session, House Democrats are committed to passing our opportunity agenda that will make Georgia the best place to live, to learn, and earn. Lifelong learning is key to unlocking every Georgian's full potential. From pre-K to higher education, we ensure all Georgians, regardless of background, have access to high-quality learning opportunities that will prepare them for jobs, careers, and communities of tomorrow. Last week, we were proud to roll out our Learn portion of our agenda so that all of our students can thrive. One of the most important ways to ensure that our students get ahead is by repealing the failed voucher scheme that Georgia Republicans rammed through during last session. We know that voucher schemes don't work. They take critical money away from our public schools and our students. They do nothing for rural families and students who live dozens of miles away from private schools. They divert funding away from schools that need it the most, and they make the disparities between working families and the wealthy even worse. Let's be clear. Let's be clear about these vouchers. They are a disgraceful scheme to funnel public state dollars to private schools. They are a disgraceful scheme to funnel public education dollars to private schools. And there's no evidence to back up the claim the proponents make. Student performance doesn't improve. In fact, studies from Louisiana, Ohio, Washington, and Indiana show that it drops when they change from public schools to private schools. Public schools are the bedrock of our education system. They need more funding, not less. So it's time for Republicans to put their politics aside and do what is right. repeal this scheme to funnel money to the rich and invest in our public schools. Join us to pass House Bill 436 and support our schools, our students, and their families. And now, I'll pass it over to Representative Griffin. Y'all greet him as he comes. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Leader, and thank you all for coming out this afternoon. When I retired from the military and returned home to work in my family business and in the political arena, my father told me one thing: do the right thing. Do the right thing. I'm guided by those principles as we stand united to introduce a bill that seeks to repeal harmful private school vouchers program, a program that jeopardizes the future of our students, undermines the strength of our public schools, and burden our communities with unnecessary costs and division. Across the country, bipartisan efforts have successfully prevented the implementation of private school vouchers, efforts that reflect a shared commitment to public education and ensure that every student has access to a quality education, regardless of their zip code or background. States like Nebraska and Texas have demonstrated leadership in defending public education, working together across party lines to prevent the diversion of taxpayers' dollars to private institutions that are not accountable to the public. In Nebraska, both Democrats and Republicans lawmakers have constantly fought to protect public education by opposing voucher programs. Nebraska's strong tradition of public schooling and the constitutional protection of the Blaine Amendment have kept private school voucher program at bay. Whoever motivated by the desire to preserve equality educational opportunities or protect public funds, both parties have recognized that the diverting funds from public schools to private institutions would weaken the very fabric of our educational system. In Texas, despite attempts to introduce voucher programs, bipartisan opposition has been a constant force. Legislators from both parties agree that vouchers would worsen the financial challenges facing our public schools, especially in rural and economically disadvantaged areas. As in Texas, the fundamental question is whether we want to strengthen the schools that serve the vast majority of students or divert resources to a small subset of private institutions that are not subject to the same level of oversight and accountability. Here in Georgia, we are at a critical junction. The voucher law seeks to further erode our public education system by funneling taxpayers' dollars to private schools, schools that does not serve all students, especially those from marginalized communities. Traction to what proponents of this bill might claim, vouchers do not improve student achievement. In fact, repealing the students' studies shows that voucher programs fail to deliver better academic results and often lead to lower academic outcomes. Harmful impacts on rural school districts. Rural districts in Georgia will be disproportionately affected by the voucher program. Rural schools already face the most significant challenges, from limited funding and teacher shortages to the difficulty of providing specialized service and extraordinary opportunities. In many rural areas, the voucher program will provide minimal, if any, benefit for students, as private schools are few and far between. Instead, it would be depleted the almost already limited funds available to support public education in these areas, weakening the ability of local schools to serve the majority of students who rely on them. Rural school districts would face the challenges of losing funding without a sufficient influx of students to private schools to compensate for the losses. This would widen the disparity between rural and urban education systems, making it even more difficult for students in rural communities to access the resources, services, and support they need to succeed. Yeah, almost. We are introducing this bill today because it is time to rescind this misguided voucher program. We stand here as one, united in our belief that vouchers are wrong for Georgia's future and prosperity. Our schools must be placed where every student, regardless of their background, our children deserve better. As we introduce this bill, let's do the right thing. Here you go.
Thank you so much. That was Representative Floyd Griffin, who has introduced House Bill 436. Thank you so much for bringing this bill. Next, we want to introduce Vidalia Turner, who is president of the Georgia Federation of Teachers, and she's going to share about the bill's impact on our educators and public education in Georgia.
Thank you, and thank you for listening today. I am an educator, and I want to thank all of these esteemed representatives and senators for standing with us today. This is going to be a real fight, and it takes a lot of courage to stand for the right thing, especially during these times. I am flanked and honored today not only to have these men and women standing behind me, but my own state representative and my own state senator flanking me, Representative Billy Mitchell, and Senator Randall Mangum. And we are especially proud of this young man right here. But when all of my hair was brown about 30 years ago, Georgia started the voucher plan. Vouchers came about in 1954 following Brown versus Board of Education. It is being sold now and it's being expanded. It's a malignant cancer, so I was not surprised when the Lieutenant Governor came up with the foster care list. What's going to actually happen, y'all, is that more and more money will be put behind this voucher scheme. It's going to hurt our economy. It's going to hurt our schools, who already have fixed costs, where over 90% of our children already go. And where these schools serve our brightest children to kids 17, 18 who cannot lift their heads up and feed themselves, where they have to have special apparatus, special personnel, and et cetera, that's burdening our school districts. And where this state has sorely funded what works in education, underfunded it for years. We're proud to have QBE funded, but that's a 1985 law under Joe Frank Harris. And the funding is inadequate right now. But private school vouchers happens to be born out of a billionaires group called American Legislative Exchange Council. That's where it comes from. And I want everybody to educate themselves on what ALEC actually is and who belongs to ALEC and how ALEC gets folk elected and how ALEC actually comes up with policies and legislation and give it to our legislators. And in saying that, I want to thank the 16 Republican brothers who stood against this bill in 23, although some of them folded, but I want to thank the 7 or 8 who stood against it this time. Our governor got it passed, and you know the governor has a big stick He got it passed with one vote. The Lieutenant Governor has already told us if this bill passes in the House, it won't get through the Senate. And I scratched my head and I said, I wonder why. Georgia ought to be asking what goes on behind the scenes as why the Lieutenant Governor is not allowing or just assuming that people are not going to independently think. It's time we take the muzzle off of our legislators. Private school vouchers take many names around this country, including scholarship programs, tuition tax credits, education savings accounts, portability plans, but regardless of what they are called, they use our money to fund private schools and divert scarce resources from the public education system that serves 90% of us, and that's why we have great America. Private schools undermine public schools, and given with the money and with the programs, and given the restraints, and we know what's coming down from the White House, our president has already told us what he's going to do in terms of education cuts. So we're going to be put in a bigger bind. This bill needs to pass. Private school vouchers do not save taxpayers money. In voucher programs, the public schools from which students leave for private voucher schools are spread throughout the school district. The reduction in a few students from each public school does not increase operating costs. You got fixed costs already. But vouchers, period, do not improve academic achievement. Repeated studies of voucher programs across the country show that vouchers do not result in better test scores, and in many states have led to declines in academic achievement. It serves no improvement in achievement, period. And you may say, well, these are not private school vouchers. The people who are already, and I want you to know this before I stand back there, according to the National Council of Public Education, there's a bill right now, and this is called, this bill will give $5 billion per year for the next 4 years of our dollars over to special interest folk who are making money off of vouchers, because that's what it is. It's a money scheme and a segregation scheme. I've given the press some of the packets on this. I'm trying to put it up right now. But this voucher scheme in Georgia is all a part of it, and it will continue to spread and take our dollars. So we can talk to you even off camera because I have limited time. So you will see just how deep this is. Many states put vouchers on the agenda for folk to vote, up or down. This state did not. This does not improve education. It serves the few. And even if the Lieutenant Governor said, oh, now we're going to take it to the foster parents, we rate number 37 with a foster care system in this state. You need to know that. So the bill needs to die. It is not good for us, and we need to support measures that actually are good for us, and we can talk about those that this state does not really want to talk about. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much. Next, we want to introduce Otha Thornton, the past National PTA president. He'll continue to talk about the devastating impact in Georgia.
Good afternoon. I'm Otha Thornton, the 53rd National PTA President, where we serve over 4 million members in the 50 states and U.S. territories. I'm an 8th generation Georgian. We stand here today in the shadow of history when decisions are made to impact 2 million children in our state. With that being said, in 1955 in this building, Governor Marvin Griffin said that the schools are not going to be integrated. We will go as far as necessary, even to the point of abolishing the public education system. Governor Griffin's word at that time, they were promised to dismantle public education rather than to allow integration. Let us be clear, this opportunity here today is about expanding opportunity, not restricting it. Here's some of the devastating reality of school vouchers. Arizona, the state of Arizona in 2022 decided to implement a voucher program similar to what we're doing here in Georgia. For 2024 alone, they had a $738 million deficit, and they're projecting $864 million for 2025. That's $1.4 billion. So we have a model. 71% of students receiving vouchers were already in private schools or homeschooled, meaning that public tax dollars went to private schools and other sources. Arizona's public schools are crumbling today, while private schools, many of them unregulated and discriminatory, are reaping the taxpayer funds. Who's left behind? Number one, rural Georgia. Many rural areas don't have private schools. This is very important. Also in rural areas and in most counties, the public school system is the largest employer. Transportation, special education, and other services are not provided with these vouchers. The second set is left behind are our students with disabilities. Private schools and these vouchers do not cover the services that are required. And number three, black and brown students. And that is part of the impact of these bills. Getting ready to close, we have a moral obligation to ensure that we support our public schools. And thank you for your time, and we'll keep it moving.
Thank you so much. Next, we introduce Heather Scalzitti, parent advocate.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I stand before you in strong opposition of school vouchers. While it may seem to offer choice, ultimately it fails to support our most vulnerable students. As someone who was an adopted child and later became a foster parent, I know how critical a stable and supportive environment is for children's success. Socioeconomic disadvantaged children often come from backgrounds filled with trauma and instability. They require safety, but also access to comprehensive services that address their social, emotional, and academic needs. School vouchers divert public funds to private institutions and do little to address these needs. Instead, they risk further marginalizing those who are already disadvantaged. In Georgia, we urgently need to update the Quality Basic Education Funding Formula. The QBE formula that supports our students needs to include wraparound services to support our students holistically. This means not just funding our schools, but also their mental health resources, having counseling services, and after-school programs. These services are essential for our students, and especially those who have experienced traumas, ensuring they have access to the support they need. The current QBE formula has not been updated in 40 years. Georgia is one of 6 states in the country that does not factor in student poverty. Georgia has a profound 51% of students that live in poverty. And if we consider that approximately 400,000 children are eligible for this voucher, that translates to $2.6 billion to fund this voucher. This is a disservice to our public education system and ultimately to the students and educators in our state. Currently, 1 in 5 of our students face a mental health crisis, and they're also facing food insecurity. These challenges are even more pronounced for the children in the Department of Juvenile Justice. Many of these young children are individuals who found themselves in this situation not because of their wrongdoing, but because of the lack of essential shelter, food, and clothing necessities. Excluding these children from the current scholarship bill, SB 233, is a grave oversight and perpetuates the cycle of systemic disadvantage. This voucher also adds a strain on our current child care crisis, leaving parents nowhere to send their kids. Furthermore, these schools may not align with family values and religious beliefs, adding another layer of complexity to this decision-making. Vouchers do not guarantee improved educational outcomes. We must focus on what truly serves our children's best and that's adequately funding our public schools and the programs designed to meet their needs. The goal of the General Assembly is to provide a budget for education. Instead, we're diverting funds to serve private schools and institutions, and this is not equitable for our children in Georgia. We should invest in public schools by adequately funding education and by providing the much-needed wraparound supports. Let's work together to ensure that every child in Georgia has access to an adequate, quality education and the resources necessary to overcome their challenges. In Georgia, we can create a future where every child can succeed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I'll introduce our last speaker, Senator Randall Mangum.
Greetings. I simply stopped by today to say that there is a friend in the Senate. The House is not standing alone with concern for our students and concern for this misguided piece of legislation dealing with vouchers. It is so misguided that the broad coverage of 400,000 people does not add up when we are looking at quality education for the targeted persons who are supposedly the schools that have challenges. Our students need real relief, and we must stop the defunding of public education. Vouchers, as has been stated, and I will not rehearse that, has not worked in Arizona, has not worked in so many places. But when we are looking at only 141 million for 400,000 eligible voters, eligible students, we have a serious problem. This legislation was not crafted in a way that takes this into consideration. We are underfunding education, and we must get back to being leaders in education rather than Georgia being at the bottom of the stack, competing with Mississippi as to who has the worst literacy rate, who has the worst educated students. Georgia must be a leader. The United States must be a leader again. We were once the leader in education worldwide. We are no longer leading. We are talking about eliminating the Department of Education, talking about not educating our people. And this is a ladder to progress and making our country really what it needs to be. And so today we must stand with public education. I am proud to be a product of public education from Griffin, Georgia, even though I represent Stone Mountain. But we must let freedom ring even with education. Thank you, Randall Mangum.
First of all, I want to thank everyone for coming out today, because this is a crucial bill. And I want to thank my good friend, Senator Mangum. He volunteered on, I think Friday we were talking. He volunteered to come on and say, I will take the lead on this bill if we get it out, when we get it out of the House. Now, I close by saying this. We can't get it to the House unless we have an opportunity for a hearing. I ask you to contact the chair of the Education Committee and tell him that we want a hearing. We want a hearing. Do the right thing.
And just in closing, we'll say, again, we are seeking a hearing in the House. We'll be seeking a hearing in the Senate. The Georgia House Caucus believes that Georgia's GOP school privatization advocates have been able to advance these vouchers And they started this beginning with white parents' resistance to integration in the 50s, all the way to today's regressive movement to ban books, prohibit teaching science and history, and oppress marginalized people by limiting the freedom to earn and learn. And we are here to oppose that with Representative Griffin's bills. We'll close it out and ask if there are any questions. Thank you all.